Hello everyone, Eric Teacher here, and today we are going to be talking about the Age of Revolution, as seen in our Knowledge Encyclopedia history books. We're going to talk about inventions from this age. We're going to talk about government shifts, the revolutions that happened during this time, and we are also going to talk about the things that happened during this age that still impact today. So with that, oh wait, we've got a question already. Yes, I did say we would talk about inventions. So what is the most important invention? Great question. Let's get right to it. It is almost impossible to think about the Age of Revolution without thinking about the inventions that revolutionized the world at this time. So here I have three examples. Now these of course are not the only three inventions that happened, but they're kind of more the categories of inventions that had a big impact. So for example, let's start with the automobile. The car was invented at this time. And here I have a picture of what the first car sort of looked like, very different from today. But it wasn't just cars that created these new ways of travel during the Age of Revolution. We also had trains, became very popular at this time, and at the very end of the Age of Revolution, we will see airplanes also being made. So when you are thinking about the question, and again, if you ever get lost on what question we're talking about, you can refer to the purple text here. But yeah, when you're thinking about what was the most important invention and you want to talk about things that revolutionized travel, that changed travel forever, consider either the automobile, which allowed every single person to start moving from city to city more frequently and more easier, or trains, which allowed, we would say, intercontinental travel between different countries or really big countries from one end to the other, capable, as well as we could move supplies and resources from one end to the other in large amounts with trains, or of course, the even faster way to travel, airplanes. But that isn't the only important invention of this time. When we think about things like vaccine and medicines, it is the Age of Revolution that really saw this take rise and start to come up with the things that become the base, the foundation of medicine as we know it today. So, for example, at this time we had our first smallpox vaccine, which would lead to a way to create more vaccines in the future. But it wasn't just vaccines at this time. So if you wanted to write something about a medical invention, there was also anesthetics and surgical tools that we still use today, like, for example, the bone saw, and even x-rays first became a thing during this age. Oh, wait, I've got another question already. What are anesthetics? Good question, good question. So, anesthetics are the things that doctors and surgeons use in order to make sure that we are not feeling any pain while we are, for example, having surgery done. Nowadays, it kind of comes in the form of a gas, or it's possible that you get it through an IV. But at this time, they were using very crude things like chloroform in order to perform surgery. And to think about why this is a revolution is because before this, there wasn't really a way to perform surgery without the patient feeling pain. So, super big deal at this time, right? As well as I don't even need to go into why x-rays became such an important thing. Now we could actually look inside the body and see, oh, well, it is this specific bone that is broken, and start to plan out how we can go best to fixing or mending the body. Okay, but that's not all. You might even consider that the steam engine was the most important invention at this time. The steam engine was, and as it says here, the most efficient engine to power large machines at this point in history. So with the steam engine, we were now able to power factory machinery to produce more goods in factories. We also started using it for other forms of travel, such as ships and ships and trains. The steam engine is going to get used a lot for things that require a lot of power. Yeah, so let's keep going and let's talk about these in a little bit more detail. How can we look at our invention and explain it properly? So when we are talking about something that is the best in an age or something that is the most important, we should really follow the rule of threes. Because if we just write the light bulb was important because it gave us light at night, that's too simple. It doesn't quite capture why that was such an important thing. Why, for thousands and thousands of years, we had to quit doing what we were doing at night because we could no longer see. It doesn't fully show the importance of the change. So you want to give 3 reasons to really make your point strong. So here I have some examples with the steam engine. So you'll notice my first point on why it's important is really just the definition of itself. Like I said, light bulb makes it easier to see when it's dark. For the steam engine, it provided mechanized production. That means that we now have something that is producing and using energy that is not a person. And we can now start to attach things to this engine to have it start to make energy, have it to start make goods and products, fabrics. There's no end to what starts being applied to the steam engine. But because of that, we have mechanized, something that's mechanic, producing, making things. And so with that is what it immediately does or helps. And then our other 2 things need to be sort of as a result of that. Like, because things become mechanized, what also grows and changes to make it important? And what I have here is, of course, transportation. I had mentioned that earlier with it started being used for boats and shipping, as well as being used for railways, trains. And those, of course, revolutionized everything. And like I said, for your writing, you will need to, of course, expand on these ideas, write more about it. Even though here for my presentation I have the very short revolutionized shipping and railways, you would need to say how it revolutionized shipping and railways. So talk about now boats were able to carry more people for farther distances at faster speeds, as well as goods, same with trains. And as I mentioned earlier, with just the invention of the train itself, connecting the countries together. For the first time, a person could very quickly, especially in Europe when they start building the trains, move from country to country. In America, it would be once we finally make an intercontinental railroad, move from the East Coast to the West Coast, things like that. But then, of course, when we have more things being made and travel being made easier, that leads to what's called economic growth, which is just countries are able to produce more goods, means they're able to sell more goods. When transportation is better, that means that they can sell more goods at much farther distances. So it leads to more money being made. More money being made usually means more money being spent. So we see growth in the economy. So this is an example of three things that you should look at or talk about. When you do your inventions, you don't necessarily have to do these three exact things, like, how did it affect the economy, how did it affect transportation, because that's not going to apply to everything. For example, if you do vaccines or anything in the medical field for being revolutionized. So consider that. And with that, let's move toward talking about another kind of revolution, a revolution of government. And here we have the three biggest government revolutions of the age of revolution. So let's talk about them. First, I have here the American Revolution. This was a war fought between Great Britain and King George III, which includes British Parliament, and its 13 American colonies. The reason why this war even happened, and here I'll even circle it so it's a little bit easier to tell which one I'm talking about, is because the colonies did not have any say in the government in Great Britain, the government all the way across the ocean. And so they were being taxed and punished when they didn't agree with those taxes without being able to have any say in the government whatsoever on their behalf. And that's what caused this revolution. Next, we have the French Revolution, which is another one that you may have heard of before. This was a war fought in France between the long-established monarchy of King Louis XVI and his royalists against revolutionaries who wanted to change the system of government away from a monarchy or its aristocrats, which is like a wealthy ruling class. And then we have one that maybe you haven't heard of. This is the Haitian Revolution. At the time, it would have been known as Saint-Domingue. And this was a revolution that happened over in the Caribbean. This colony was the wealthiest in the French Empire. So it's another one having to do with France over here. But not by the French people, by the people of Haiti. The native inhabitants of this place were enslaved. As soon as France took over it and it became a colony, the native people became slaves that were there to grow sugar and coffee beans, which sold really, really well at this time. And what happened with this revolution is eventually the slaves rose up to be slaves no more, and they took their country back. Oh, I've got a question. You don't see the Haitian Revolution in the book. Yeah, this revolution is not mentioned in every history book the same way that the French Revolution and the American Revolution almost always are. And that might be because Haiti was a smaller country. It could also be that history is written by the powerhouses. So France was pretty ashamed of losing this, and it caused France to lose a lot of power. This revolution also scared the Americas at the time. The Americas, I mean the United States, once it formed its government, because there were many slaves in the United States, and they were worried about an uprising. So it's very possible that we don't see this one in a lot of history books because it specifically has to do with slaves taking back their country. And like I said, it also is a much smaller country, and usually history is reserved for the powerhouses, the winners. Not to say that they didn't win, but let's get into that. Let's talk more about why those revolutions, why these revolutions were important for this time.